So death is nothing at all. I've only slipped away to the next room. I am I and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the trace of a shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same that it ever was. There is absolute unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of mind just because I'm out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. So I am sitting here today with Chris Lyons, Executive Director, CEO of AIM Services. And Chris and I have known each other for how long?
Oh,
a long time.
Pretty close to 15, 20
I was
years.
thinking a very long time. And we got to know each other through the work of our respective organizations. Jake's Help from Heaven on my end and AIM Services on your end. What brought us together is the overlap that those organizations have. Both organizations completely committed to bettering the lives of those with disabilities.
That's very true, Heather. And thanks, by the way, thanks for doing this.
Well, welcome to the show.
It's good. It took a podcast for us to have more than 5 minutes together and not in a crowded room. So AIM Services is a large not-for-profit agency based in Saratoga that supports people with developmental disabilities, traumatic brain injury, a whole slew of challenges. And we provide all kinds of traditional services, residential supports, day supports. We have a lot of self-directed services. We support about 4,000 people with challenges, and we have a total of about 3,500 employees. You know, I was a scum-sucking trial attorney before I went to AIM.
Well, that's exactly where I wanted to start this conversation. You were an attorney, and you joined AIM Services. Why?
That's a great question. And I hope you were discussing the synergy between Jake's and AIM, which is a powerful one and one I am so grateful for. You know, one of the things that makes it work is you and me and what we know we're doing together and the people we're helping. And the stories are so powerful. And I'm so grateful that we're helping some of the folks that you're assisting with all kinds of dream realizing needs so that they can impart meaning in their lives and live independently in the community in the least restrictive environment. So you're changing people's lives in such a meaningful way. So yes, I was a trial attorney, partners in a litigation firm, and I was crisscrossing the country, hired to try cases during the deinstitutionalization movement where people were coming out of cinder block institutions, living in group homes. There was a lot of litigation around it. So I tried cases in just about every one of the 50 states, trying to show that people were entitled to live independently in their communities. I was on the board at AIM, wanted to do something a little more valuable, my legal work, which I loved. So I decided to come and work at AIM. And at the time, we were very much an agency-driven agency, very focused on compliance and rules and staying within the guardrails. And I said, what if we changed the focus and focused on the folks instead of hoping for a trickle-down effect on who we're trying to help, which is what you guys do so well. You're so focused directly on helping. There's no bureaucracy at Jake's. There's no administration. So I wanted to flip it on its head. And I said, what if we just focused on outcomes, just where people were, see them, and not just with our eyes, and listen to them, and not just with our ears, and not just to respond, but to understand. Instead of saying, here's some services, plug yourself in, say, what can we create for you that creates a pathway to success? Who are you? What are your hopes, your dreams, your desires, your wishes? Who do you want to live with? What do you want to be competent at? What are your favorite color or music? What do you like to eat? What would you like to learn? Where would you like to go? Where would you like to go on vacation? If you live in a congregate setting, people control those parts of your life.
They control. So let me stop you for 1 second. One of the things that I think drew me to you as a person, but also to AIM Services, because I'll be honest, when we first started, when Jake's was, the story, like we started it completely out of grief. It was very personal for us.
Yes.
And we wanted to help kids like Jake, families like ours. But when we didn't know the organizations, we didn't know the other players, we didn't know any of that. And a lot of the other players we met were kind of what you just described. They are taking care of individuals who are medically challenged or developmentally disabled, but they are taking care of them under their own terms or how they perceive it to be best.
Bingo.
And what I loved about AIM and with you is this exact conversation that we're having, that it's flipping it, that it's not about what we think is best. It's allowing these individuals under safety, under whatever kind of regulations they may need, but allowing them to make their own choices. I feel like you and I can talk about this for days because it's just so beautiful, right? And it's one of the reasons that I love supporting AIM. Even today, when I was kind of looking up some stuff on the website, your website is filled with individuals smiling, participating in activities, living.
Yeah, you guys do it so well because you're so much more on the ground, and we do focus on being on the ground present, but that's your whole existence.
But to have an organization like yours that is as big as you described, that is involved with bureaucracy, but fights it, I think it's impressive.
Yeah, one other quick story that sort of accentuates this. I had a gentleman, we still support him in an apartment. John, he'd be fine if I told his story. He has cerebral palsy, uses a wheelchair, 55 years old, and hooked to a catheter. And he was living in a 12-bed group home that we operated. And he came to me and said, Chris, I want to take Taekwondo. Now, any other agency, the ones you described
Yes.
of controlling and no risk, would have bought him some Bruce Lee movies. I don't know who the contemporary kung fu
Version of that,
people are,
yeah.
and then redirect him to the TV. That's his Taekwondo experience. We found a sensei in South Glens Falls, Craig. Shout out to Craig and his team. We'll teach him Taekwondo. We'll teach him how to move his chair like he would his legs. We'll teach him the martial arts, the Zen peacefulness, the just for defense and the being one with yourself. And John transformed. First of all, he was with the people that weren't receiving services. It was natural supports.
Like true inclusion.
Yeah. Yes, true inclusion. 75% of the people that live in these congregate group homes that are still operated under OPWDD report that their closest relationship is with somebody who's paid to have it with them. Anyway, so John, he's getting into it, and all of a sudden, amazing things happen. His range of motion improves. His whole sense of himself, his understanding and acceptance that he is who he is and he's awesome. And his diction, people with cerebral palsy are sometimes hard to understand. He's eloquent, and it's pretty hard on me on occasion. And so he's a black belt now.
I love that.
Wins tourneys. He's killing it. He moved into an apartment with another person we support. He helped with the renovations, and we had a whole customized dishwasher for him to use with his chair, and I don't think the guy's washed a dish since he moved in. But he's incredibly creative. He creates his own music. He published a book.
What is it? Give him a shout out. Maybe you can get some sales.
His last name is Thurber, John Thurber. If you look up THURBER on Amazon So it's about two boys who meet at the end of the summer, and they spend the day together and become fast friends and really get to know and accept and care about each other. And at the end of the book, you realize one of the kids uses a wheelchair, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter through the whole book.
Those are the stories, right? And I think you probably have countless of them. Those are the stories that matter. Those are the stories that matter if you are fully typically able and if you're not, to the point of his story. We live in a society where we are defined by so much of our physical ability or lack of physical ability that you guys provide so many opportunities. And I want to talk a little bit about the housing because, you referenced that there's you have a lot of different housing, right?
So we have the whole array. So we do still have, there used to be something called intermediate care facilities, which are like skilled nursing facilities. We were the first agency in New York to transition all of those into independent residential alternatives, which are today's typical group home. They're still certified settings. They're 24/7, 365. We have a dozen of those. We're shrinking that footprint. We're moving everybody in from supervised settings to supported settings, not 365, not 24/7. Apartments, houses that we purchased, that we own or rent for folks that are totally capable of living more independently. It is amazing that if you give somebody a chance, no matter how profoundly challenged they present, they can be and live more independently. So we're always operating with a rebuttable presumption that people can be living their best lives in a more independent, lesser restrictive environment. And then we have completely community-based housing. So they get supports from us, they get housing subsidies from us. We're there to fill in the gaps, but they live independently. We tend to diminish people's opportunities and see them as not capable, and that's very limiting when you're supporting somebody with that model. But if you can see and dream as they are and support on their terms, that then the sky's the limit.
Part of what I love about this, and I've been thinking about this actually all day, as you know, Jake died when he was 4. And he died at a time when the world felt a little smaller. You had to work really hard to find supports, and you had to find, we traveled to Boston, and I didn't know at the time, I didn't know any other families like mine. There weren't people that I came in contact with that had the same situation. I think now of AIM, and I think of the opportunity Jake would have had. Would he be living independently? Probably not. But would there be a place for him? And would there be all of these, whether it was painting or taekwondo or music or whatever? It makes me feel happy that the world is there and that Jake would fit in it so well. And then it makes me feel sad because he died before he could benefit from some of these amazing places.
Yeah.
But I think that what you're doing at AIM makes it where everybody could fit in, even my Jake.
Yes. First of all, when you say you traveled to Boston, that's a slight understatement. I mean, your story is one of unconditional love and commitment, of never giving up, of always being present, of always being positive, of always being optimistic. I am moved by you and Brian every day and what you did and how you're raising Ethan. And I actually attribute it mostly to your parents.
Well, obviously, it's not just me.
But the other thing you mentioned is, would Jake be living independently? Independence is a unique characteristic to each person. So, you could be profoundly challenged, medically fragile, and want to spend 7 years of occupational therapy to learn how to use an orthotic device to have a meal with your peers at the table. And that's independence. So people can live incredibly meaningful lives, imparting meaning in their lives on their terms and not ours. We don't substitute our judgment for people we support. Jake absolutely would be living an incredibly independent life.
That's beautiful. I in all of these conversations and all of these things, I've never heard it explained in that way. And that's absolutely beautiful. I love that.
He was a cutie.
He sure was a cutie.
I love the pictures of him and your dad.
Oh my God. They were like best friends.
Best
friends. Yeah.
I meet every new employee at AIM. We call it the executive hour. And we talk about how we value the people we support. And we talk about how we value each other. I talk about the old models of control, and I call it well-intentioned babysitting for adult people who don't want Barbies and coloring. They want to go out to dinner or go to Vegas or go to the ocean or, get a job to be valued. I tell them, if you want to be a special person doing special things for special people so you can go home and feel special, don't work.
Don't do it. That's not the reason.
Yeah. I get the care gene or whatever. Yeah. And I get that. But if you make it about you, like, hey, aren't I great? You've missed the point, which is why we try to always focus at AIM, not on what we do or how we do it, but why we do it.
Yeah. It's not about going home and feeling better. It's about the true belief, right? That people are fundamentally the same, regardless of what you're, what I mean? Like that everyone matters.
It's a certain amount of quiet satisfaction about being human and treating others like
humans. So when I asked you to be on the show, it was twofold, right? Because I know we can talk about this forever, right? And because we come from sort of the same kind of place, in the place of where we want to make a difference, not for ourselves, but so that everyone can have more access to a great life. I also know that people are often listening to this show because they are struggling with grief. And sometimes it's traditional grief, right? Sometimes it's just the basic grief that they've lost someone. They know I've lost someone. Sometimes it's anticipatory or ambiguous because their child or their friend or whoever is sick. But your world and my world intersect in a different way. We've talked about Jake already today. I talk about him as often as I can, but you lost your son as well.
Yes. Yeah. My son, David, he was 26 and we were very close. He had his share of issues and challenges, and he had alienated a lot of his social supports. But he and I were still very, very close, and he was starting to pick up the pieces and do well. And he had some kind of incurable internal infection, and he died very suddenly. Heart stopped. Those days, it's like you remember like it was yesterday. I know you do. Yeah. So,
do you picture yourself sometimes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Some of the cool things about grieving that really are remarkable is after David passed, I started dreaming about him, and I was with him in the dreams and talking to him. And it was really amazing. It was so vivid and so real. And he was trying to comfort me rather than me him. And I found that maybe that was a subliminal way of, gaining a small amount of moving to the next chapter if there are. I don't really believe in chapters much, but I carry it with me every day. I'm not afraid of being overwhelmed with emotion over it at times. I think those are good outlets. I think that's incredibly natural and healthy. I also try to find appropriate times for that to happen, like not right now.
I can't think of a better
They're
time.
not going to invite you back to the price dropper. The guy's crying in the melons over here.
I'd be lying if I didn't get caught crying sometimes in supermarkets.
I do, and people, my family, my siblings, and my incredible wife and my two daughters, they know, they can see it on my face. They're like, we know what you're processing. So that's just natural. That's almost like a physical thing. But as far as the permanency of the loss, that's I was just mentioning it. I don't know if we got it that to Madison, is it, or whoever's doing the editing?
Yes.
Yeah, people say, well, time to move on. And I have no intention of moving on because that would involve diminishing, forgetting, or putting away David. I like having him with me and out in front, but I can go forward. And I have gone forward. I'm a very joyful person, a little crazy, but you can go forward. And so for me, grief is not the dictionary definition of grief. Grief is unique to everyone. And for me, it's an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity to grow and know myself. I do agree that it gives a certain vividness to things we have and appreciation. There's the appreciation part of grief. For me, it's not debilitating. For me, it's not. It's emotional, but I'm an emotional guy. I just see it a part of me. I'm a slightly changed, but aren't we always changed from our experiences? This is it's another experience. It's a big one. I mean, like Jake is to you, it's sometimes you feel like it's the only one and that it's driving you, but it isn't. You have a beautiful son. I got two beautiful daughters. You got an awesome spouse and family. I have an awesome spouse and family. You were so intentional over processing Jake's passing that you did this. And for me, in large part, and I upped my game at AIM after David passed away because everything had a little bit more meaning to it in some way.
Were you CEO when he passed already, or did you become CEO after? Because you were not always.
That's a good question. I was senior director and counsel, then executive director, then CEO. Those roles were about the same. I think it was right around that time. I'm a different person at this age. Wiser, maybe, probably not. But I'm kind of over myself in a lot of ways. I don't take things and internalize them. I have no grievances. I hold no grudges. I don't judge people. It's very liberating to just accept everybody for who they are and get on. If I can help, fine. But I don't really care if you like me in as much as it affects how I feel about myself. I care about whether we like each other to do something good together.
Absolutely. So something you just said kind of struck me. So it was unexpected. You found out that David passed. You went and took care of stuff, but then you had to go to work. And there's a huge part of me that understands that, because we woke up the next day and walked Ethan to school because we didn't know what to do, because you're sort of deer in headlights and you're feeling it all and feeling nothing at the same time.
No.
But can you tell me when you got the phone call, if you're comfortable, can you walk me through that?
Yeah. So an interesting thing about it was when the phone rang, I had that. I knew. So anyway, it was his girlfriend crying almost incoherently, and that was slumped over the sink, and can I get down there? And so I went down, did some preliminary stuff, and then came back up. I was like, well, what are you going to do? I mean, I'm not one for sitting in emotional darkness. First of all, it's uncomfortable. Second of all, it's not productive, and I'm not in denial. I'm not going through with some juicy rationalization that he didn't die, but I'm not going to let it tear me down. And there's a certain amount of selfish strength in carrying on. Like in some ways, I selfishly was like, look at me, I'm here and I'm not telling anybody and I'm I'm doing my job. And I got a certain amount, this is very personal. I've never told you about this. I got a certain amount of personal satisfaction out of being strong. And so it was a defense mechanism. And of course, I was so passionate about what I'm doing in this new wing and, our self-directed services. I mean, that was my whole life's work, essentially. So it seemed like the right thing to do, both internally, intuitively, and executive processing. And they came together and said, yeah, that's what you should do.
Did you have a moment or moments like after, like later, where it just,
yeah. And his funeral was tough.
Like, when did it hit? Like, when did you realize? Because I do think there's those, you almost still think they're coming back. Like, it's that whole idea that death is forever, but you don't believe it. But then there's that moment, at least for us, where I knew it was forever. And
yes.
It's devastating.
Well, yes. Sometimes you wake up and you have to remind yourself. That's the thing. I guess other people have that feeling. You probably did. Yes. The times I break down and cry on the melons at Price Chopper or the avocados, I try to get to something that my tears won't show up on the produce. Cucumbers, no. Don't cry on cucumbers. You're going to be found out. Those moments I mentioned that I had them, but the reason I have them is because my mind starts to remind me of the permanency. I can deal with it as a thing that's happened in my timeline of my life, moving forward, but not moving on. But when I get caught up in the permanency, I will never see my son again. I will never have a Christmas with him. We loved to fish together. Everything we ever did together, I will never have again. And that's sad. I mean, it's just a sad thing. That's the objectivity of loss that everyone who has that grief has, is the permanency. When I process it and start thinking of things, like right now I'm sad because I'm thinking of the permanency, and then I say that's good. This is good. It's healthy, and it's like I said, it's just a part of who I am. I mean, you've known me a long time. I'm a very optimistic, happy person. I don't want to not be that.
I don't know if it comes physical for you, but like when I am stuck in that permanency, it's like in my gut. Like I feel like I've been punched in my stomach. Like I could almost throw up. I talk about that sometimes, but I don't know that I've ever asked if anybody has that same reaction. Like, but for me, it's visceral. Like I literally feel like I could throw up. I have it a little bit right now.
Yeah. Well, no, my stomach is a temple. So
your body's a temple.
My body's a temple. Yeah. So I don't get any of that stuff. That usually, a slice of pizza and a beer usually takes care of that. But what I do get is, you see it on me now. I get very red face and overcome. It's like a wave.
Yeah.
I get these waves where you're fighting back and it's good not to fight back, particularly if you're in a scenario that's comforting. My body definitely feels very upset, and I'm sweating and I'm red and I'm crying, and that cry, when you were a kid, where you can barely breathe, or the one where you just, everybody knows that cry.
It's like the ugliest cry ever. It is a hard journey. How long has David been gone?
6 years.
6 years.
It's a liberating, beautiful thing if you can take negative things and make them into positive things. It's very simple. That's like kindergarten talk, right? You can take negative things and turn them into positive things. Nobody is more living proof of that than you. So, I mean, let's face some facts, right? Word up. I also have empathy for people that get uncomfortable. I mean, I slide in that I got a dead son in conversation every once in a while because people are trying to get facts about me. Got any kids, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, did I mention it? Do I not? Bada bing, bada bang. Dogs and cats living together, human sacrifices. I don't know what to say sometimes. So I slide it in sometimes, and people are like, what do I say? Do we stop here? And I say, I'm so sorry, or whatever. And I'm like, yeah.
It's hard to know. Like, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I say I have one son. Yeah. Sometimes I say I have two and I pretend like he's still alive. Then I feel like I'm a little weird when I do that.
I do. I've done that.
Do you do that?
Yeah. I've done that because you just don't want to. You're too far down the conversation to have to go back and say, oh, yeah. I'm so glad you said that. I'm not the weirdest person on the planet.
No, it's bizarre.
I'm the second weirdest person on the planet.
Well, the weirdest thing I ever did, and I think I might have actually even talked about this in the show once, but I got into a very bizarre conversation with someone at the grocery store or something bizarro. I created this scenario where I had an 18-year-old, because Ethan was 18 at the time, and a 4-year-old, because Jake was 4 when he died. in no way is that
No,
even normal or real. And they're like, "Oh, quite a gap." And I'm like,
no.
"Yeah, oops." And I'm like I'm going deeper in this story that is full
Yes.
bullshit. I feel like no matter how well versed you are in the grief world, it's still like sometimes you
All
just
right.
get stuck,
All
right?
right.
You
First of
get
all,
stuck.
how old would Jake be?
He would be 18.
Right. So, and in your mind, he is 18
Yeah.
because you see him as an older Jake. I do that too.
Yeah.
But it's so cool that you did that, and then as the conversation ends, you giggle because
I
you're like, "What the hell was I?"
I
And then you're
totally
like, "That
giggled.
was awesome." First of all, you're in control of the narrative. You're having a little fun, like a cat with some yarn. Yeah, hey, I'm not going to tell you the truth. No,
It
that's
just
called being human, and you're a very unique emoter to begin with. I love that about you. You don't have a disingenuous bone in your body. So that did you just snort?
I did snort.
Okay, can we edit that out, Madison? Um,
Good job. You snorted now. And Madison, keep that snort in.
so those things have a certain amount of humor and joy to them, so that it's not unusual or weird about that.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel better because I think even Jake was like, because I always believe Jake is like hanging out with me, and he was just like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening here?"
Yes.
Do you talk to David?
Yes. Yeah, and for the early dreams when he first passed away, we had conversations, and I replay those. Yes, I do, and usually it's about what he would be doing now.
Okay.
David was one of the rare human beings that made me feel better about myself. He appreciated my core. And he's like, my dad's a good guy, and he's a good dad because he doesn't do the typical, a dad is a role that you see in the movies. He's present with me. He once told me the thing he loved the most about me is that I never judged him. He said, "You never judged me. One of the few people you never made me feel like I'd let you down or I was bad or whatever happened. You just were present as my father."
That's something you can hang on to, right?
Yeah. All other people close to him didn't end on such good terms, and I feel terrible for them. It's a terrible thing to love somebody, have a fight or be in fight mode, or be acrimonious with each other, and then one dies. Because then you're like, shit, I can't get that back. I feel for people that happens, which, by the way, is a lesson, right, Heather?
Yes, it is.
I love everybody, see everybody, appreciate everybody, connect with everybody, be authentic with everybody, because that one person that you're an ass to could die, and you're going to carry that with you.
One of the things that I think kind of recurring themes is, we just talked about how important it is to keep relationships and to bring people up with you and to just love. At the same time, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like this is potentially true with you too. I also feel like you have to preserve some of those things, right? Like you have to preserve yourself and you have to focus on those relationships. Some people you can try your very best with, and it just doesn't always feel good. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I don't have time for that anymore. Do you? And I don't know that it's just because of the loss of Jake. I think it's getting older. It's all of the things, but I do feel like it's like you've talked about. You have joy. You have all these things, but part of that also comes from focusing on those that matter. What do you? Where do you fall in that?
Yeah, that's a very good point because they seem to be somewhat contradictory. Love everybody, but also So yes, and I mentioned before we started, I've got to the age now where I just want to be with people I want to be with. So my downtime is with people that give me joy and care about me as much as I care about them. There's a certain selfishness to that, but that's not what I'm talking about when I say love
Yeah.
everybody. The love I have for my wife, who, by the way, she took a chance on an older guy, much older than her, who had two kids. Who does that? And her eyesight is really quite good. So, and she saved me in every way a person can be saved because I was waiting to fall in love again and move on, and so that's that. There's that kind of love, and the love for everyone it's not letting them vampire your emotions or use you or feed off of you emotionally. It for me it's everyday kindness. So I am an incredibly gregarious human. I can talk to anybody about anything at any time. Are you in school? What are you doing? I give them my card. I say, keep going. You seem super nice. You got it going. And we may not even know each other. I find that the day to day encouragement of each other as humans is the form of loving everybody. I think every meeting as a transaction, social transaction has a potential to inspire or encourage, or most importantly, affirm, because people are walking with all kinds of darkness, and we reduce each other. It's hard. It's hard to be a human in today's society now. So when you see somebody and just affirm them, whether they're serving you a meal or checking out your groceries.
It's exactly right. And we talk about that. And, people don't know that you've had this huge loss. And it's a huge loss. And we don't know what other people are going through, right? Like, we just don't. I'm not always great at it, but I 1,000% agree with you. I think you are better at it than me because sometimes I'm not always nice on the phone. My final question thought for you is, how do you, and we kind of addressed this a little bit, but I loved how we opened this conversation talking so much about just like how we both believe in so many of the same things in terms of people with disabilities or people with challenges or whatever that looks like. And I know for me, prior to Jake's death, I was not as enlightened, or however we want to say it. Jake getting sick and seeing the world as a mom of a kid who had those issues changed me to my core. And you were already doing this work before David passed. You referenced that he had, his fair share of challenges. His passing, has it changed how you do your job?
Yeah, well, all the things we just talked about how you're somewhat transformed when you have this kind of loss, you carry with you. And if you are changed in a way that carrying grief changes you, then you're going to be different in everything you do. And it applies to my job. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, I am more appreciative of things. And one thing I'm extremely appreciative of is the opportunity I have to do what I do. And by the way, I've loved watching you from when you first started doing the Jake thing, which was awesome, to the way you are now, because you are different. It's still Jake and what we talked about and grief and all that, but the way you approach Help from Heaven, and it's awesome. You see my face. I mean, it's just, you have become an impactful thing. So it's not just knowledge; it's, you're different because you've seen a potential in you never would have seen without the grief. And so,
100%.
yes, I have that.
Yes. It drives you in a different way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You had referenced earlier, and I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but do you have a poem or something that you
Oh,
were
yeah,
talking about? I would love to hear it.
yeah. I love that. I do a lot of funerals and help people with grief when I
What do you
can.
mean you do funerals? Are you a
I became an ordained minister
Oh,
about
okay.
18 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I'm a practicing Christian and go to church. But my religion and my beliefs are extremely private to me. I don't talk about them. It's
Yeah.
just the way it's the way I view the world. I have an undergraduate degree in philosophy. I can give you 500 good reasons why there's no God, but this is personal to me. So yeah, somebody asked me to read this poem at a funeral once, and I kept it. I read this at David's services as well, but to just sum up grief and death. I read this because it has a beauty to it about not moving on, and it's the person who has died talking to you, like Jake to you and
Okay.
David to me. So it was written by a priest, and it's death is nothing at all. So death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away to the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the trace of a shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same that it ever was. There is absolute unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of mind just because I'm out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
You embody that as the way that you live, and I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I like that.
And there's parts of that I absolutely love. I hadn't heard that before.
I got through that pretty well too. I usually have a little more.
I am been sitting here in sheer terror over the next portion of the show because we have reached the part where it's called Ask Heather Anything, and I'm terrified of what you're going to come up with.
So I want to know, and you have to be honest about this. when no one's around and you're not working, you might be at the beach, on vacation, or just at home by the pool. What kind of cocktail do you make?
Oh, I don't know. I drink anything with
All right, there
anybody.
you go. Anything.
Yeah, anything with anybody. I would say that I would never order in front of someone like a Sex on the Beach or a Long Island iced tea or any of those. Like
Yeah.
I don't do any of those like overly like fruity mixed drinks. Like alone, I'd probably
How
drink
do you
one.
feel about tequila?
Oh, I drink tequila a lot
Yeah.
of it. I love it. Like it's
First
my
of all,
go-to.
it's the one alcohol that gives you an entirely different feeling than all other alcohols.
Thank you, Chris, so much for being on the show. I have loved talking to you, and I think we covered a lot of things.
Yes, they told me there were door prizes.
You had your seltzer.
Oh, actually, you know what? I unconditionally adore you for the person you are, the mother and daughter, and just human you are, and the work you do. I am so grateful that we know each other. I'm so grateful we're connected. You inspire me. You make me, happy, and for that I want to thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And, I was sitting here and I'm thinking, I do this with a lot of people who are in the same boat as I am. And I'm thinking of Jake and David, and I'm sure that they are connected somehow right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend, anybody who might benefit from listening to this. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or two.